All right, we are back, everybody. Mike is back with us this week as well. Welcome to Head in the Clouds from Go Cloud Careers. My name is Chris Johnson. I'm the Chief Operating Officer, joined, as I just said, by Mike, our founder and CEO, and Alonzo Coleman, our Chief Marketing Officer here at Go Cloud Careers. So this is Head in the Clouds, and this is where we come to have fun, come to unwind, come to talk about topics that are relevant and important for all of you. So today we're going to be talking about how to build an elite tech career. And more importantly, we're going to be talking about the secrets to help you build your tech career. So the most important thing about a tech career is the tech. I mean, that's a starting point for any tech career is the tech. But how do we learn the tech? What tech do we learn? How do we build an elite tech career? And what's the tech career advice to get us to that point? How do we build that tech career? How do we get the tech job with no experience? How do we get promoted in tech? It's by learning. But how do we learn? And what do we learn? That's the key. And that's what we're going to be talking about today to help you build your tech career and be successful in your tech career. So I've got some things, as always, to share with you to make sure that you know about, to make sure that you get to help you in your career development. But before I share those, I want to hear from Mike and Alonzo, and then I'll share my gifts for you. So, Alonzo, any words that you'd like to share with us before we get to Mike?
Oh, you know it.
Oh, and before that, let us know where you're from in the chat box.
Yes, that's what I was about to say. Well, that Chris took care of that part. So I'm in Katy, Texas, the big Lone Star State. Love it here. It's every day is a preheat oven of the last 3-4 weeks. So it's been incredibly hot down here. Actually, the funny thing is that it was so hot, a piece of my tile melted off the side of my house. So I had to, so it's been insane. But I digress. Getting back to Go Cloud Careers and our Head in the Clouds program, we are happy and excited as always, not only to have you all here, but to have Mike back in the seat, sharing all of the experience about how we can help transform you into the best cloud architect you can ever be in the quickest and most direct way possible. So everyone, strap in, get your questions going on. Let's rock and roll. This is our time to shine, have fun, and do a lot of amazing things. So Mike, let's get going, buddy.
Don't get too far going, Mike. These are just your intro words. I still got things to tell people about. So
I'm just going to start with the intro. Welcome, everyone. We're here to talk about building your tech career because that's what we do. We help people build elite tech careers, cloud architect careers, enterprise architect careers, security architect careers, all the architect careers all the time. That's what we do. I've been in tech now for 25 years. Actually, it's more than that now. It's actually kind of scary. And I spent more than 2 decades helping people get hired. And almost every day I get another success story. I've got students interviewing right now as we speak with one of the biggest cloud providers, but also enterprise providers as well. I'm meeting a student tonight, a Jamaican student who lives in England, but he's in Florida, so I have a chance to meet him tonight. And every time I meet another one of my students who will soon be a success story, I'm thrilled. Tonight, we're going to talk about the key factors of learning tech, which 90% of the people get it wrong, and it crushes their career. I want you to be hired now, not a year from now. I want, whether you work for AWS, Azure, Google, Goldman Sachs, it doesn't matter. And I want you to be able to transition from one company to another overnight. That's the kind of agility I want you to have. You hear some whispers in your company you don't like? Go to a new one. You don't like your manager? Go to a new one. It doesn't matter. You're not earning enough in your company and you want a 6-figure raise, I want you to have the skills to go to a new one. And those agility skills are half business, which we normally talk about, and half tech. But it's knowing the tech the right way, which is the exact opposite way most people approach it in certifications, that gives you that agility, that mobility, and the ability to rise when everybody else is stuck worrying about their 30-second certification. I want you to be there, and I want you to have an elite career. So we're going to talk about how to do that. So that's what we're going to talk about tonight, learning the actual tech, not some silly marketing names. You're not going to hear physicians running around there that only talk about Pfizer drugs. They prescribe drugs from and medications and processes to get their patients healthy. You're not going to talk about an airplane pilot that only knows Boeing. That'd be ridiculous. There wouldn't be much of a pilot. So we're going to talk about how to be a real technology professional. And we're going to have a lot of fun with it. And I want you to ask as many questions as possible so we can truly help you build the ultimate technology career. Whether you're an engineer, whether you're an architect, whether you're an airplane pilot or a doctor, these same principles apply, and I want to help you be successful.
All right. So let me tell you about a few things, everybody. I want to make sure that you all know about some free resources that we have for you. Just a couple of our many free resources that we have for you is our free How to Get Your First Cloud Architect Job Guide. You can find the link for that in our chat box and in our description. Also, I want to make sure that you know about our Winning the Interview Guide, another free resource for you as well. That will be in the chat box and the description. These are two of the many free resources that we have just to help you all get your foot get going in the right direction towards your goals. So if you're interested in becoming a cloud architect, get that free resource of how to get your first cloud architect job. And if you want to know how to win the interview, get that free Winning the Interview Guide. Good starting points for both of those and absolutely free to you. So make sure to take advantage of that. And yeah, that's all I got. So I want to apologize if you hear anything like right now. There's a table saw going on outside my building. Don't ask me why. It's been 2 years, never heard a table saw, but now I hear a table saw. So somebody decided that they were going to be table sawing outside. So if you hear that, I apologize. It's not as good as the shrimp and grits distraction that I had a couple of weeks ago, but I got to deal with it. Anyway, so I also want to remind everybody that you're more than welcome to put questions in the chat box. We encourage you to ask questions and put them in the chat box, especially questions related to the topic that we're going to be discussing. So, you know, we may not answer them immediately, but we want to incorporate them into the show tonight. So put any questions that you might have in the chat box. So now that all that's out of the way and we are settled in, strapped in, ready to go, I guess we can ask Mike the all important question. How do we learn the tech, Mike? What does this mean? What's the point of this discussion? Set us up, set the scene, so to speak, and we can just dive straight in and peel back the layers of the onion.
So there's two components of learning the tech. The first is understanding how it works. And the second side of it is really understanding what the tech actually is. Now, whether you configure the tech or not in your career is a totally different story. But the secret to advancing in your career is knowing the tech and how the tech actually works. And I want to give you first we're going to talk about the difference between knowing how to configure the tech and actually knowing the tech. And then we're going to talk about what I mean by the differences between the two. Every one of you, I'm going to tell you right now, knows how to go to your browser and type www.gocloudcareers.com in your browser. That's hands-on experience. Every one of you has it. My cat Cindy knows how to do it, although she usually messes up with her paws when she does it. My wife watches cat videos all day long, or gymnastics videos. And all of you went to this webpage. How many of you actually know what happens? Now, the software engineer that made the code on the website has no idea what happens from the beginning to the end, even though they know how the website is coded. The network engineer knows a component of it, but how does it all work? I'll give you an example. My cat Cindy types www.gocloudcareers.com on her iPad, and this is her iPad. I bought her own little iPad, 13-inch iPad Pro the other day, and I put videos of little fishes on it, and she catches the fish with her paws. It's all kinds of fun, but I also use it to monitor these things. So when she's tapping the fish or whatever she's doing, when you go to www.gocloudcareers.com, your PC does a lot of things. First thing it does is a DNS resolution, and it finds the IP address for GoCloud Careers. Now your PC has to reach the web server, right? So what does the PC do? It looks in its routing table and says, do I have a route to the subnet? And if it doesn't, it looks to see if it has a default gateway. If it has neither of those two, it drops the packet and everything's done. But the PC has a default gateway. So the PC says, woohoo, I know what to do. I'm going to send it to my default gateway. But that's at an IP level, right? But your PC is plugged into the Ethernet port. So now your PC has to find the MAC address to the actual website. So the P says, ARP, who has the MAC address for www.gocloudcareers.com? And then the local router, which is the default gateway, says, woohoo, I have the MAC address, and it proxy ARPs, and it answers the PC, here's the MAC address to reach. Bear with me for 2 minutes to go through this. I want you to understanding the tech versus knowing how to configure it. Now your PC goes to your default gateway, and your default gateway looks in its routing table. And it says, I have a route. And it says, okay, so it sends your packet to the next router, but they're connected via Ethernet. So again, it does this ARP, who has the MAC address, and sends to the next router. Now, chances are there's about 10 routers between you and my internet service provider where my server is hosted. Now, poof, every router along the way does that route lookup. Now, finally, we've actually reached the web server. Assume there's no content delivery network because I want to make this simple. Now, as soon as that packet reaches the web server, what happens is my PC sends a TCP SYN, which opens the connection. The server on port 443 responds with the SYN with an acknowledgement, now sends a SYN to me. Now I send a SYN back to the PC, and now we've established the connection. Now the PC sends me a packet, I acknowledge it. The server sends me 2 packets, I acknowledge it. It sends me 4 packets, I acknowledge it. That's how TCP establishes flow control. And now I'm able to understand those messages, that code my browser can decode and actually see it. That's what happens from the time iCat presses www.gocloudcareers.net on the web browser to the time she actually sees the page. And all of you get the same thing. But all of you have used your computers for the last 10, 20, 30 years, and most of you don't know that. That's knowing how the tech works. And no matter how many cloud projects you do or network projects you do, you will never learn how the tech works until you actually learn the tech. Now, how do you learn the tech? You have to learn the underlying technology. Now, to get from my house to the AWS cloud, we're dealing with routers and switches, which means you need to know how the routers work. Now, that's very different with learning how to configure the routers. How does the router work? In fact, I was dealing with a broken firewall the other day, and I called the people, and it was a router I had no idea how to configure, a firewall I had no idea how to configure because it wasn't a Cisco one, and it wasn't a Palo Alto one. And when people were giving me tech support, I said, you're wrong. And they said, you just told me you don't know our devices. I said, I know next generation firewalls, and you're wrong. Escalate it. By the time I got to tier 4 support, they're like, oh, Mr. Gibbs, it's nice to speak to you. I don't normally speak to people that actually understand the stuff. I had to escalate 3 levels of tech to actually get somebody that knew something, because all these people knew was how to configure. They couldn't help me at all, but that's neither here nor there. So the point is you learn the router. How does the router forward packets? How does the packets get switched across the backplane of the router? How are the routes processed by the router? When the route comes into the router, it hits the CPU, it establishes a flow, and then it finds an outgoing interface, and then everything else is done in an ASIC. But if you know how that works, guess what? If it's a Cisco router, a Juniper router, an Arista router, an Extreme Networks router, or an AWS router, or an Azure router, you still know, because you learned the underlying technology, and you get it. Now, when you really want to master something, how does it work? How does TCP work? You don't know that. You don't know how flow control works. How does UDP work? I mean, you're really getting deep. And guess what? It's the same TCP, the same UDP, the same ICMP on AWS, Azure, Google. Now, when you're going to deal with a client, let's say you're an architect, you're going to have to move their stuff from their data center to the cloud. And guess what? I get 100 emails per day of somebody trying to tell me they're going to save me cost by migrating to the cloud. Now, nobody knows what I do. And sometimes for fun, I say, tell me how much these virtual machines are going to cost me on the cloud. And I say, well, you know, I hosted in my own OpenStack data center for 10%. Would you like to teach me how to be a real cloud architect instead of selling me nonsense without knowing? And I've signed up some of those people too along the way as students, and now they have much better jobs. And they're no longer hurting people by selling them the wrong things that are not good for them because they actually understand. So you have to understand how things work, not how to do them. Now, if you're an engineer, you still need to learn how to build them. But you know what? If you understand how things work at the functional level, you can pick up the documentation and you can configure everything. When I took my Cisco Certified Internet Expert exam, they actually gave you the instructions on how to configure, because they knew that anybody could do it. You don't need to know anything to learn how to configure. You can pick up instructions that says, click this, click this, click this, click this, and be done. In fact, I taught an 8-year-old how to do it, how to set up EC2 instances and S3 buckets. I taught a 6-year-old too. She was really cute. She used to say EC2. It was beautiful, but she didn't know what it meant. And that's what happens with cloud projects. You just click, 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 and you don't know what it means. It doesn't do anything for you. So I want you to understand how technology works. And guess what? When you do, you know it all. You know, that virtual machine and virtualization, which IBM invented in 1970 when they were time-sharing mainframes, is the basis of cloud computing today. Now, granted, VMware in 1999 invented their hypervisor. And that's the foundation of the modern, x86 systems that we use everywhere on all servers, that AWS uses with their Nitro hypervisor, or Citrix uses with their Zen hypervisor. It's all the same tech. It's just virtual machine. And Kubernetes is the same, whether it's IBM OpenStack, AWS Kubernetes, standard Kubernetes, it's all the same. Learn Kubernetes. Learn virtual machines. Learn storage area networks. Guess what? The same block storage that people have in their data center for the last 30 years is the same block storage that you have in the cloud. It's no different. And if you know block storage, you know AWS, you know Azure, you know Google, you know Alibaba, you know Dell's cloud, HP's cloud, you know it all. Because you learn how it works. And here's the benefit. Nobody's taking advantage of you by telling you I got this new thing when it's the same thing as the old thing. You don't get tricked. And the way I described how you connect from the PC to the website, I want you to truly understand that. I understand how this works. Now, if Google called me, and I'd probably say no, but if Google said, hey, I want to hire you, and they asked me about their cloud, I could pick up any certification manual if I wanted a certification, and 2 days later, I could pass the Google Professional Cloud Architect. Why? I've done it to prove a point to somebody that all these certifications are silly easy when you understand the technology. But you can spend 6 months or a year learning a certification and still know nothing because it doesn't teach you how the tech works. I interviewed the first time before we started this program, I interviewed 1,000 AWS certified people. Not a single one could even tell me what an EC2 instance was. They had no idea. They didn't know it was a virtual machine. When I asked them how object storage worked, not a single person knew. But they knew what S3 was. But they didn't really understand it. And you can't design as an architect what you don't understand. And let's say you wanted to be a rock star cloud engineer. You can't performance tune what you don't understand either. Imagine trying to take a Honda Civic and make it a fast quarter-mile car. Like, what's that movie, The Fast and the Furious, where they did all those cool cars? Somebody needs to understand how an engine works in order to do that. They need to understand fuel and oxygen and compression ratios and transmissions and gears. They have to understand that. But you don't get it by hands-on building. That's why the people that design skyscrapers don't work as construction workers, because it doesn't teach them that. So whatever your career you want, whether you want to be an engineer or an architect, I want you to get to the real fundamentals. I want you to learn how it all works before you even touch it. What happens? For IP things, like Internet Protocol, guess what? All the documentation you ever wanted is free if you go to the Internet Engineering Task Force and you read all the requests for comments. Guess what? I've done it. I've done it. And these things read like watching paint dry. So I've read them 4 and 5 and 6 times each. Then I made my own master documents of it. You want to learn how Ethernet works? You go to the IEEE. And they give you the specifications. You want to know how virtualization works? Go to the people that invented it. Read how it works. Really get down and deep. Now, I know I say as architects, we don't touch the tech, but we design it. And you can't design what you don't understand. So whether you want to be an engineer, a good engineer, whether you want to be an architect, the only time you don't need to know how things work is to be an admin. And guess what? There are no more admin jobs because the artificial intelligence is making them irrelevant. And the economy is rough. And we need an incredible amount of architects. I got people interviewing every day and still getting hired almost every day. But we don't need admins. We don't need those intro-level people. Do you know why we hired intro-level people in the past? I'm going to tell you right now. They were cheap. So we had intro-level people doing tasks. But I ask you this. Does geography matter now? Didn't COVID prove that we could work anywhere we wanted in the world? Did you know that the average salary that that the average house in San Francisco, and I mean house, I mean like a 800-bedroom shack that you don't want to live in, is $1.49 million. And if I don't pay you $200,000 a year in San Francisco, you can't even afford an apartment and food. You can't. You won't survive. But guess what? In other parts of the world, for 30,000 euros, for example, you're living great. And in other parts of the world, for $2,000 a month, which is less, you're living great. And it doesn't matter where you are to do these things, but the employers can find what's called arbitrage, the equivalent in salary. 100,000 US dollars equals 28,000 is the equivalent of 28,000 US dollars in India, same standard of living. Now, would you hire an admin for $60,000? Or would you hire a rock star $100,000 equivalent person in India for $28,000? Someone that not only knows how to configure, but they know how it works. They know how to performance tune. They know how to make sure the systems work. They know how to make things happen. So if you're a company and you're the CEO, and for those of you that don't understand business, here's the CEO's job of a publicly traded company. Increase shareholder value, which means increase earnings. Now, if you're the CEO and you don't take actions like hire people overseas, you're fired. And if you take actions intentionally against the company, you're put in prison because the SEC will come and handcuff you, and it's not a good day for the CEO. So if you understand the things from the manager's perspective, and I'm going to get back to the team, you understand why we don't need admins anymore. We need rock star engineers and superstar architects. And part of that is learning the tech. How does the tech work? What's going on under the hood? Well, how does all this stuff work? And then you can work anywhere. Anywhere. Because if I teach you how to drive a car and you go rent a car, and you get lucky one day and you get a Mercedes, you can drive it. The next day you got an Audi, you're still having a great time. The day after that, you have a BMW, and now you're driving a little fast and you get a ticket from the police. But that's the key. And then you get a Chevy, you know what to do. You get a Ford, you know what to do because you learn to drive. So learn the tech. Don't learn any silly marketing names. Learn the tech.
All right, that was some good stuff there, Mike.
That's like dropping gems.
Yes, like Richard said in the chat box here. This is decades of experience spilled out here for free. Yes, I love Bob's comment. As a Honda obsessed person, I love this example. Back when you were talking about the Fast and the Furious.
Love Hondas.
Anyway, so I've got a question for you. So, okay, you said all that. So which one should I learn? AWS or Azure or Google? Which one of these do I need to learn?
Yeah, which is the best?
How am I going to get a job? Which one should I learn?
Which brand of t-shirts would you like to learn? Would you like Puffs? Would you like Kleenex? It's all the same. All a cloud is when you get rid of all these ridiculous marketing definitions is somebody else's data center. So I want you to think about it. Your house is like the equivalent of a private cloud. It's your data center. When you go to AWS or Azure or Google, it's like going into a hotel and checking into a room. It will never be as good as your own private cloud. And here's the reason why. In your private cloud, you own everything. So you can provide a level of security that a public cloud provider can't. I can say Alonzo's more important than Chris today, and Alonzo's traffic gets through and Chris is blocked. I wouldn't do that, but you know what I could do? I could say every user is rate limited to this speed. And that way, when Chris's PC gets a worm, he can't take down the rest of my systems. If I want to hire retired Navy SEALs and Israeli commandos with machine guns to stand on the roof of my data center and keep bad people away, I can do that. In the cloud, I can. And I'm exaggerating the point to prove a point. All a cloud is somebody else's network in a data center. Now, if you know the network in the data center and you learn the cloud, it doesn't matter where you work, because a virtual machine is the same thing on the cloud. The only thing that changes the names. Virtual machine, EC2, compute engine instance. Or virtual machine. Azure calls it a virtual machine. There are object storage, S3, blob, cloud storage on Google. Who cares? It's all the same. MongoDB is the same MongoDB in your data center, AWS, Azure, Google, Alibaba, Dell. It doesn't matter. Oracle's database, same thing on every cloud provider. So learn the cloud. Learn how to drive. Don't just learn how to drive a Honda, even though I like Hondas, because what happens if you get a Toyota? Your car gets bumped and scratched in a parking lot and you get a rental car. What are you going to do? So what I recommend is you learn the cloud. Learn every component of the network and data center. And guess what? All of them are listed in that free document, How to Get Your First Cloud Architect Job. We cover 100% of all the technologies in that document that work in all clouds. And then when you're ready to go out on an interview, because you're going to learn nothing in a certification. There's nothing in the AWS Certified Solution Architect Professional related to architecture. And there's nothing related to cloud computing in there. And I know I've interviewed 1,000 people that still don't even know what cloud computing is that pass that certification. They have no idea what cloud computing is, but they know the names of the AWS services. So learn the cloud, then spend a week or a weekend or something like that, pass the certification, and now you got something on your resume. And which one do you do? I personally recommend AWS or Azure after you've learned the cloud, and here's the reason why. Google's market share is like 11%. AWS and Azure are the big players. I personally think Azure is going to be the market leader long-term because the investments that Azure's made in both AI, and Azure is by far the market leader. Not only did they do a $10 billion investment with ChatGPT, they did another big one. Was it McKinsey or KPMG? They did a couple $1 billion investing there. They just invested in Meta's billions of dollars in Meta's language models right now. There's no one even close to Microsoft in terms of artificial intelligence. Google's a second player there, but there's no one close to it. I mean, at their level. But also, if you look at earnings, I think Microsoft's actual net income is like 72 million compared to Amazon's like 2 billion. I mean, they're not even in the same universe. Amazon's total earnings are like a rounding error compared to Microsoft. And Microsoft has got business solutions groups, and they're known by everybody forever. That's not saying I don't love Amazon. Of course I do. I'm just saying if I was going to learn any cloud after I learned the cloud, it would be AWS or Azure. But remember, that's not the cloud. It's just somebody else's names. You know, I used to practice internal medicine. And I am grateful for this experience because not only did it change my life, it changed the way I approach learning, and it's changed the way I've taught people for the last 20 years, and that's why my clients are so successful. And they work in AWS, they work in Azure, they work in Cisco, they work in IBM, they work in Google, they work at Accenture, they work at Deloitte, they work at KPMG, they work at Capgemini, JP Morgan Chase, Barclays Bank, BBC, Zscaler. I've got students working in every one of these places after I've trained them. And it works because they learn the underlying tech. And that's the secret. Learn the tech. And then guess what? So here's how we learn medicine. They teach you families of drugs. This is how a beta blocker works. This is how an ACE inhibitor works. Now, the reason I'm telling you this, and I'm going to get off medicine because I know it's kind of deep. If there's 50 different beta blockers, and guess what? They all do the same thing. And that way, when the drug reps come in there and they say, I'm going to take you to this football game, I'm buying you this, I'm buying you this, you can say, thank you. But you already know what the drug does ahead of time. And that way, doctors know that they've got 50 of these things that they can choose from. And Alonzo's insurance pays for Metropolo. And Chris's insurance pays for propanolol. Guess what? I can prescribe either one. It doesn't matter. It's the same drug, same family of drugs, so I know which ones to choose. And that's why they learn families. If you learn the tech, doesn't matter where you work.
I'm going to drop another surprise here. Guess what, guys? Read that up top, up there. why tech skills aren't enough. Well, Mike's over here talking about learn the tech. Well, you got to learn it the right way. Yes, that is critical. Learning the tech the right way is critical, but also tech skills aren't enough for the elite careers, for those
long
jobs, for those high-paying careers, even if they are tech jobs, even if they are engineer roles, even if they are DevOps or any of these. Get your why tech skills aren't enough guide to find out what you need to do differently, what you need to do in addition to the tech skills, because we all know it, we all see it. AI is coming. It's here.
It's here.
It's here. So things are gonna change, just like when all the assembly lines happened with Henry Ford. I know he didn't build the first car, but he mastered the assembly line. Things changed. Industrial revolution in the early 1800s across Europe and North America. Things changed. Like printing press with the Gutenberg, things changed. It didn't get rid of writing, it proliferated writing. So AI is here. So you need more than the tech. Make sure to get your guide completely free to learn why tech isn't enough. But thank you for sharing that, Mike, about AWS, Azure, Google, Toyota, Honda, car, cloud, car.
And if I can touch something real quickly, because on Cindy's iPad I saw a question.
You touch a lot, Mike.
Okay, but this is something Elias put in there. My goal is to be an AWS cloud architect. I want to tell you, Elias, why that's not a goal. Here's their thing. The only people that have an AWS cloud architect is AWS. Let
me share the whole thing, because you for everyone else.
Okay.
He says, I took the AWS and Azure training and I found myself lost. So
I didn't see that part.
What?
I only saw the last part. I didn't.
Right, I know. That's why I'm sharing the entirety. So I took AWS and Azure training and found myself lost. I wanted to focus on AWS and get a job. So is there a way you can help me, please? Thanks. From Washington, D.C. Oh, you're in a great area. Yes, I want to be an AWS cloud architect. That's my goal. All right, now let's run with this, guys.
Okay, Elias, if you want to be an AWS cloud architect, you can only work for one employer in the entire world, Amazon. I want you to become a cloud architect, and that way you can work for AWS, Google, Cisco, Deloitte, Accenture, any of the vendors that work with all these people, Verizon. But not only could you work there, you can work for the big banks that can give you a $500,000 bonus at the end of the year. By only limiting yourself to AWS, basically you talked yourself out of a job. I want you to become an incredible cloud architect. And in order to do that, please download the completely free guide, which we talked about how to become an architect, because we can easily help you get on. Well, I don't know which career. Yeah, you did mention your career. And also join us on Thursday's webinar. It'll be on Zoom. We can have a face-to-face conversation.
Yeah, that's what I was going to recommend when I got to his question, because there's a couple of people here that have asked specific things about the architect role. So yeah, join our webinar on Thursday. I'm going to ask Tyrone to put the link there in the chat box. You can also find the link to that in the description. But it's a webinar that we do every Thursday that's on Zoom, where we can interact with each other, not just like we're doing here. We can actually interact with each other and help you a little bit better. Cyber Mommy asked, where do you get the guide? Any of the guides that we're referring to, you can find the links through the chat box or in the description. And click the description box below here. We've got the links to the how to get your first cloud architect job guide. We've got the links to the winning the interview guide. We've got the links to the why tech skills aren't enough. Oh, it's right in front of me up top there. Why tech skills aren't enough guide. And we've got the link to the webinar. And Tyrone just put that link to the webinar in there as well. So you'll see that there.
But going back to Elias's point, come to the webinar and we'll teach you how. But here's the secret, Elias. Well, maybe it's not such a secret anymore. If you took AWS or Azure training, and you're still not going to understand any of this. And before I started this company, I was happily retired doing private career coaching and getting people, huge jobs, and I loved it. And I took on a private client as a favor to a friend. And I said I'd get him a job as a cloud architect. He was a fine young man. And the father said, thank you. And I bought him the 3 best-selling courses on AWS. And after I bought them, I told them I would spend 4 hours with them every Friday and actually teach them for real. The problem was 3 days later, he set up an S3 bucket, he configured an EC2 instance, and he asked me, what is it? I said, what is it? You just watched 3 courses I bought you. And he said, I don't know what it is. And honestly, I watched those courses in horror. Here's the name of something. Here's how to configure it. But they didn't tell anybody what it even was. I mean, there was nothing in there. It was just a bunch of jargon, mumbo jumbo, babbling, and watching somebody's PowerPoint slides where they were babbling. There was no education in there. So we can easily help you get to your goals, but you have to learn the underlying tech. And it's not covered in any certification whatsoever. And why don't they cover the tech? Well, if I tell you it's really exciting about a transit gateway, or I tell you about Cloud Hub and you don't know better, you think it's a new invention. But our BGP route reflector, which is effectively what Cloud Hub is 35-year-old technology. It's not new. An EC2 instance is 20-some-year-old technology, 25 years old now. It's not new. But if I don't teach you what the underlying tech is and I just give you a marketing name and I can tell you how exciting it is to go from a capital expenditure, which might be the best thing, to an operational expenditure, which could be good or the worst thing, but tell you it's good and you don't know better, you're excited. So they certifications which are designed to help you sell a vendor's product, and really, you can almost call it vendor indoctrination or brainwashing, don't teach you the tech. You got to go learn the tech for any of these careers. And I can tell you from experience, I took a $5,000 MCSE boot camp, an $11,000 CCNP boot camp. I took a CCNA, a CCDA, a CCDP 20-some years ago. I went to apply for jobs and the employer's like, yeah, so who cares? Everybody's certified. And then I asked recruiters what I needed to do, and I actually learned the tech. And guess what? I was a lead architect within 6 months. I was designing systems on Wall Street.
Yeah.
And 2 years later, I was a principal architect. And all of you can do it. There's nothing special about me. It was just that I learned the tech instead of the certification stuff.
I'm really trying not to bring out the buzzer on you, Mike. Making it very difficult. All right. So
let's see that next question, Chris.
It's the team I worked with, or hired, I should say.
Okay, that's from CN. Design experience I don't have that have let me down in interviews. How should I overcome that?
You're going to have to get training in someone that can teach you to design.
And actually designing, not configuring, not building, not these projects of all AWS stuff.
Not GitHub, none of that.
None of that. These cloud projects don't teach you design. You have to take a course. No one is born knowing how to practice medicine. No one is born knowing how to fly an airplane. And you can be an engineer for the next 30 years and you still won't know design. You're going to have to take a course that teaches you design. As far as I know, we're the only people that actually teach architecture out there. And everybody else teaches engineering or administration. But wherever you do, whatever you do, learn design. And that means your training should involve in learning design, learning how to sell, learning how to respond to an RFI, RFP, RFQ, learning how to manage stakeholders, learning how to design a business architecture, learning how to design a future state business architecture, learning how to do the gap analysis between the past state and the future state, and then learning how to sell that to the people along the way and get the stakeholders on board, and then build the team of the people that are going to help you design it and then negotiate a deal. That's what we do as architects. We don't touch the tech. That's engineering, and the engineering is great. We've got nothing without it.
Yeah, I think it's very important for everybody to understand, Mike, that if architects are supposed to code, design, and understand the tech, present design, and sell, then what are the cloud engineers supposed to do? Right. So it has to be a clear-cut understanding that we are designing. It's 50% tech, 50% business. Understanding that tech, what it is, what it does, when you would use it, communicating it to CEO leaders of its business transformative benefits, being able to sell that architecture and move on to the next one, not build it, not get on the command line, no Terraform, no Python, no PHP, no Ruby, none of it. No hello world, no pseudo yum. That's not what we do.
Yeah, I mean, but it's a great point. I mean, so like, so just to piggyback, we got a lot to talk about, but you're going to have to find somebody that's actually going to train. And that's what we do. And I'm not trying to promote us, but you have to find somebody or somewhere that will focus on designing, and not just designing, but information gathering. and getting the details for the design. You can design all day long, but that's assuming that you got all the information. You got to get the information first. If you can't get the information, then you can't design. So that is the other half of this. So you got to find someone or somewhere that will train on the design. And there might be some out there that include designing AWS solutions and only AWS stuff with AWS names. And instead of putting a virtual machine in the design, they put what is it, EC2 instance?
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm not the tech guy. I'm the business guy. So I know what a virtual machine is. I got that much. So somebody comes to me with something other than the word virtual machine, I'm kind of confused. So, but yeah, but at the same time, these other people, while trying to do the design, are also trying to do the implementation training and the configuration training and the tinkering and building training and kind of put the design on top. And it doesn't make any sense. But we focus on the design. We focus on the solutions. We focus on the customer and the business and transforming the business. So that's what you're going to need. You can't do it on your own.
No.
You can't, it's just not possible. Maybe you find someone that can do it one-on-one with you. That would be great.
Yeah.
But maybe you use our program. Maybe you find something similar to ours that we might not be aware of. I'm not sure. But you need to find someone that can train you on the design. So I want to move on. I want to see if Alonzo's got a question. I know I had my question about which cloud should I learn. So Alonzo, do you have any questions for Mike to steer the conversation? You are muted, Alonzo. While Alonzo unmutes himself, I will let everybody know we're not skipping your questions in the chat box.
Yeah,
Just trying to move our show along.
We got
questions in the chat box we're going to get to. I promise.
We definitely will.
So
okay, so Mike, I'm thinking about technology and how it's so instrumental in the space. So how is technology helping to control the cost of creating cloud architecture?
Okay, great question. So if you actually know the tech, you can actually make an intelligent decision. For example, the other day, I wanted to compare the cost of a server from Dell to what it would cost on AWS. And AMD's got these new super cool processors. The geek in me still loves them. They're 128 cores each. And fully spec'd out a server with 228 core servers on 6 terabytes of RAM and an NVMe RAID array that gives you a couple million IOPS. We're dealing with about $300,000 one time. Now, to host that on AWS over 4 years, we're dealing with $6 million for that server versus the $300,000 one time. Now, sure, we could say, there's management costs, there's this, but, an organization that has 1,000 servers, which is nothing. I mean, it's nothing, 1,000 servers, compared to an enterprise that's got a few 100,000 of them. But 1,000 servers, now you're dealing with a couple million versus like 40 million over a few years. But if you understood the tech, you could say, let's put 80% of this in the private cloud because we're going to have better performance, greater security, and lower cost. But this web thing, which has got unpredictable demand, put that in the public cloud. But if you don't understand, you can't do this. Well, every day, somebody is going to come to you and say, I got this new cool, super cool technology. And if you don't understand what it is, in many cases, it's the same old 30-year tech with a new branded name, which is 10 times the price. So there's that. So for example, people that understood the tech, who understood that serverless still runs on servers, but you're paying on function. Every time it runs, you pay a cost, could run an analysis and say, it runs all the time. Serverless is going to be too expensive, or it runs sporadically. Serverless is better. Amazon, found out that it was 90% cheaper not to use serverless for Prime, and that you're going to hear people tell you every day how exciting serverless is. Guess what? Serverless is like an Uber versus buying a car. If you live in a city and you take 5 Uber rides a week, guess what? It's cheaper to use Uber than buy a car. But if you live in Katy, Texas, like Alonzo, and he tried to Uber 3 places a day, or for a month, he'd have a $5,000 Uber bill, and he could buy a Mercedes for that, and a Porsche for that, and a BMW, and it would still be cheaper on a monthly payment than taking the Ubers, because it's case dependent. But you don't know that if you don't understand the technology. If you don't understand the networking, what goes in and goes out, you can't understand half of the cloud costs that are there. If you don't understand what's being billed to you, you can't figure any of it out. So by not knowing the technology, you're not in the position to choose the right technology. You're in the position to say, ooh, look at all the marketing fluff in my certification. This is cool and exciting. And then everything falls apart.
You know what, when it comes to falling apart, I think this is a great segue into that about discussing RTO, RPO. What is the amount of money that companies stand to lose per minute for an outage?
It depends. There are companies that lose millions of dollars a minute. And there are companies that can be down for 4 hours and it costs them nothing. And that, again, that's the business acumen to determine these costs of downtime. And when I was at Cisco as a lead enterprise architect, I actually built a downtime calculator for organizations to think about building test labs to actually figure out how much of it made sense to take it. It would take it. It was really cool. We built an Excel spreadsheet and we used this tool called Excelsius, which we created sliders in PowerPoint, and we'd show it to executives. I built it with my partner, Francis. It was really cool. And, but that's the key is downtime is different for a business. But consider this. Consider a 911 emergency access system, which would be hosted on a single cloud like AWS. And then they have an outage due to an impaired network or a Lambda function. And then you pick up the phone to dial 911 in the US, 999 in the UK, because somebody is having a heart attack and the phones are dead because it's on a single cloud. Catastrophic. That has to be on a hybrid cloud or a multi-cloud. Otherwise, people are going to die. Same thing with a hospital. Got their patient records. And guess what? If somebody dies because you designed a silly network on a single cloud, which is ridiculous, it's a single point of failure. When people are die, is it really the cost of downtime or the number of people that died that really matters? Now you're dealing with a bank where a minute of downtime could be millions of dollars. You're dealing with banks sometimes where a nanosecond could be millions of dollars a year in competitive advantage, just a nanosecond. So it's purely dependent upon the business. And when you deal with any of these critical systems, let's say a bank, and I worked at banks and designed banking systems, you have to think of everything. We'd have two traders next to each other. In each one, trader A would be plugged into one switch, trader B would be plugged into the next switch, and we peppered them that way. And that way, if my switch went down and Alonzo's next to me, I could say, Alonzo, place this trade for me. And only 50% of the users would go down. We had 4 internet service providers. In case 3 of them went down, we'd still be up. We had 2 connections to every location, one on AT&T and one on what's now called Verizon. Why? If the AT&T network went down the Verizon, we had to use 2 separate routers at the same time. Same thing, if you're going to use a cloud, use 2 of them. And it doesn't cost more to use one availability zone in AWS and one availability zone in Azure than it does to cost 2 availability zones in Azure or 2 availability zones in AWS. And if you need high availability, you might need 2 availability zones in 3 different clouds. It might take that based upon your systems that you need. And how about backup and disaster recovery? I actually saw a well-architected framework that talked about backing up to the same cloud, but a different reason. Hey, Alonzo, I got a great idea. Why don't you put all your most critical documents in your house? Everything that you own that matters and is safe in your house. But put it in another room in case your bedroom catches fire. Do you think that's a
and it's in a fire-safe box in the same house,
in the same house.
Yeah.
And the fire-safe box is good for 60 minutes. So in an emergency, you can run and try and grab your box and take it out of the house. I mean, it's preposterous to do disaster recovery in the same
But
cloud.
if you're out of town for a week and there's a fire at your house, that fire-safe box is great.
Well,
exactly.
Yeah.
It covers you for a good hour. So, that's the key is, and what we're really talking about. It's planning it the right way. But if you don't understand the underlying technology, you won't know why a single cloud. In fact, I deal with a lot of software developers and turn them into cloud architects, and they are magicians with understanding code. But most don't know anything about a server or a network. And we all have our strengths and weaknesses, and I don't care where you come from. But if you don't understand the network, You don't understand why a single cloud won't work, because you don't understand how network outages and how a routing outage can take down the entire thing. If you don't understand a data center, you don't understand that either. So the point is if you don't have those deep tech fundamentals on the underlying infrastructure, the stuff that they don't teach in any certification, you don't know how it works. Now, any of you guys like to cook? I like to cook Greek food and Jamaican food. I absolutely love it. In fact,
Like to eat.
Yeah, I love to cook and eat. So
it's really hilarious. I had Collins come over. He's from Nigeria, but I was cooking him Jamaican food because that's what I like. And I'm frying up some plantains and some coconut oil to make them kind of healthy. And, I'm making some turmeric tea. I'm making some bami for extra carbs. I'm making a mistake. And, when you put these things together, it all has to know, you have to know what the ingredients. In order to cook, you have to know what the ingredients are and which things go together. Architecture, same thing. It's no different than planning the perfect menu at a restaurant. Engineering is how do I cook this thing to the right temperature, but it's all the same thing.
So you guys are talking about a lot of good stuff there, but there's other things to consider. And I thought that this was a really great thing. We've currently got our students working on a group project that they've been working on for about the past month now.
Yeah.
And a couple of the proposals I reviewed yesterday for these architectures. And one of the proposals included a ROI calculator. Let's talk about that and how knowing the tech goes into that, because return on investment is just as critical as all the things that you guys were just talking about security and backing up and all that stuff. But what about my return on investment?
Well,
what
Chris,
about the money that I might be saving, or the labor that I might save or spend if I don't use a particular solution? Like there's a lot that can go into that requires knowing the tech, but how? So let's talk about that.
Well, first, you alluded to something, so I'm going to tell you something I learned about 20 years ago, which changed my career and tripled my salary. And I want everybody to know it, so it's not a secret, so you can all do the same thing. I was working at a company called Riverstone Networks. This company had the absolute best engineers I have ever met in my entire life. Everybody was like a rocket scientist. And we would compete against Cisco and Juniper all the time. And 9 out of 10 times, our engineers were such rock stars that they would win every competition in terms of technical functionality. Now, there's a reason you don't hear of Riverstone Networks anymore. And the reason is after the 13 layoffs that they had while I was there, and after losing money, Alcatel bought them, and then they sold them to Nokia. Now, the reason we lost every deal, I learned, interestingly enough, I was in an airport, and darn it, there was this Cisco sales engineer and account manager in that airport, and I was there. And I finally said to them, one day I've introduced myself, and I said, I work at Riverstone. And I said, how do you guys do it? How do you guys win every deal when we lose every deal to you? We lose every deal, and we beat you on technology every time. And he laughed. The guy was really nice. And he says, Mike, you guys tell everybody about the speeds and feeds and how cool your tech is. We talk about how our tech is going to improve their business. No business gives a darn about anything related to the tech. They only care what it can do for them. Well, this person told me this secret. I immediately went to Cisco. I said, the heck with this. I'm tired of being on the team that's great techies, but can't sell. I went to Cisco, and it changed the trajectory of my life. So please understand what the tech can do. But if you don't understand the tech, you can't do an ROI model. And I promise you this, on every architecture you do, no one's going to buy it ever unless you can show them the value of the technical solution exceeds its costs. And I'm going to teach you something else that business executives think. I could sell any business executive a $50 million product if I can prove that it's going to give them $100 million in return. Every one of them. Because rich people and executives think, what is this investment in education going to do for me? I invest $100,000 in an MBA, but it raises my salary by $150,000 every year for the rest of my life. It's a good investment. Poor people tend to think, if I invest in education, it's a cost. They think about what it costs them versus what it can do for them. And I grew up real poor. And I know thinking exactly those things until somebody taught me otherwise about investments. But in order to sell technology, you have to show that value. But if you don't know what the tech is or how the tech even works, how are you going to build an ROI model for your cloud solution versus your data center solution? How are you going to do it if you don't understand the tech? Because you're not going to understand what the person has in their data center to even think about migrating to the cloud. And here's a secret. If you don't know what they have in their data center and you want to move it to the cloud, you can't. Why can't you? How do you move what you don't understand? Do you know what it's like to take a patient from a hospital, put them on a helicopter and take them to another hospital? There's a reason they just don't have fighter pilots flying these helicopters. They have a nurse on it, they have a paramedic, and they have a pilot. Because you need someone that knows the medicine to take you from point A to point B. It's the same thing with an architect. So you need to know the tech to know what you're actually changing to determine the business case for it. You need to truly understand what the cost is. You need to, as an architect or even a sales engineer, tell your customer not to buy something when it's wrong for them. You have to. Chris, remember when we had the engineering and the architecture program and people tried to buy both? And I said, no, you can't. You have to choose which one you want to buy. And they say, why? I want to buy both. And I said, if you divide your focus, you're not going to be successful at either. Want to be an architect? Great. We got a great architect program. Want to be an engineer? Here, we got a great engineering program, but you can't do both. I won't sell you both. As an architect, if a design is bad for someone and you tell them no, guess what? Your name will be so big, so fast, because customers talk, that the next time you tell somebody to buy something, like, what do I buy? And I've told customers no. And then I ended up having a blowout quarter where I doubled and tripled the sales we were supposed to have. And the reason was, when they said, Mike, what should I buy? I told them. And they believed me because they knew I cared. So architecture is about being a trusted advisor. So is senior engineering, so is management consulting. And the second we know the tech and we can be accurate about the tech and we can be principled in the way we treat others. And when we follow that golden rule of treating others the way we'd like to be treated ourselves, that's where the magic happens.
So you said a couple of things there. I'm going to put a pin in them, and I'm going to come back to them with a question of my own here. But I want to, I got a couple of questions from the chat box I want us to get to.
Of course.
Okay, let's see them. From Steve.
So do cloud architects incorporate DNS routing policies into their designs, or is that for the engineers or someone else?
Steve, it's a great question. It depends on what kind of architect you actually are. So if you're an enterprise architect, you're not going to be thinking about that. That's going to go to somebody that's in a different position. As a cloud architect, the answer is generally yes. You will have to plan what type of DNS routing to use. And it will typically be weighted, failover, or something else. But weighted or failover are going to be typically what you're going to use because 50% to Azure, 50% to AWS. But again, it's going to be design. We're not going to be the implementing people. We don't touch the technology other than Microsoft Word, PowerPoint, Excel spreadsheets.
So the planning and designing, saying weighted, not what weight.
No. Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And the reality is, Steve, we're probably not going to use something like an AWS Route 53 either in a true high availability architecture.
Yeah.
So we're going to have to work with standard DNS things. And here's the reason. If we rely on AWS Route 53, which is great DNS, but if we rely on it and AWS goes down, what are we going to use to send our traffic to Azure or Google? Nothing.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to have to implement a real serious DNS solution like the kind you would get from F5 that we've used for the last 20 years anyway, which again goes back to learning the tech. You're going to plan a DNS solution. You're just not going to configure it. Great question, Steve.
Right. And so this next one is the individual that we couldn't find his comment on from LinkedIn yesterday on the Q&A.
From Z. Okay.
So Z says, would you be able to expand on my question that was missed in yesterday's stream from LinkedIn regarding being a successful introverted cloud architect? Is it possible? Let me point out a few introverts for you. Oh, yeah, here we are. Introvert. So, Mike, you want to talk about being an introverted architect?
Yes. So Z, myself, and I've got a friend. She's the best business architect I know, and I speak to her once a week. She's also a great executive coach. We're both introverts. I can tell you my entire life, I would go to a team thing where there'd be a big party, and I would grab my Macallan 25, hang out in the corner and sip it. Everybody was doing crazy stuff, talking to each other. I am an introvert. I stay home with my wife, my cat Cindy. That's my kind of thing. So I'm an introvert, but I received a tremendous amount of training to be able to present to large groups. Introverts can do anything they want. We have multiple personality types. It's a training. I like to say I wasn't born knowing how to practice medicine. Believe me, I wasn't. Now, I went to school for 7 years, became a nurse practitioner, practiced internal medicine, and learned how to do it. You know what? I also was a firefighter paramedic, and I can tell you this. Before someone taught me how to open a fire hydrant and attach a hose, I didn't know how to do that either. I didn't know how to start an IV. I didn't know how to intubate someone. I didn't know how to design a network, and I didn't know how to design a cloud. And guess what? I didn't know how to present either, and I did not know how to sell. Z, you can do anything you want. I'm telling you, I mean, I'm not saying you can be a gold medalist Olympian because you need some extra good genetics, but with the right training, you could be a very high level athlete. You can do anything, Z. In fact, after coaching people for 20 years, this is the saddest thing. Do you know what causes most people not to achieve their goals? Fear. They are the cause of people not getting there. So, believe in yourself, Z, get the right education, and work at it until you succeed, and I promise you, you will. There is nothing you can't do. You just have to believe in yourself. And I've got lots of examples of being able to do what people tell me impossible. I injured my foot training in Israel in martial arts. 13 doctors said I'd never walk again or even be able to sit in a chair. I can tell you, it took me 8 years of all-day physical therapy, but I'm here with you right now. All of you can achieve anything you have ever dreamed of. You just have to get the right plan, figure out what's missing, and find the right people to help you get there.
Yeah, I like that. I am not so much an introvert. Okay. I can't hear you, Chris. So
I said, yeah, you're not so much, but on a scale of 1 to 10, you probably fall towards the introvert a little bit more than most people.
I've got some introverted ways. I love to speak to people, but I'm easily able to do things alone. I can go to the movies and enjoy myself. But the thing is that I believe that anyone can be verbal and strong and confident in something that they believe in tech that they know, in architecture they know how to express and how it's going to be able to solve problems. So when you find your passion within cloud architecture and being able to understand its nuances and how it works, and more importantly, how it's business transformative, your voice will come out. So don't worry about that. It's going to happen.
All right. So CN's got a follow-up from their question earlier. Do you teach design on your standard, or is the standard just to have access to the videos?
CN, I'm going to make this very clear. Accessing videos is not education.
No.
We provide a life-changing education. We are live training.
No ASMR.
We have 3 live classes via Zoom per week. We have videos, we have written documents, we have architectures for you to do, presentations for you to do, the entire spectrum of everything you need to be a great cloud architect. Please attend the webinar on Thursday. But I wouldn't wish video-only training on my worst enemies because they're never going to get there. And see, the thing that really concerns me about people that try to just watch videos is most of them will never succeed. And what people don't realize is the average cloud architect earns just over $800 a day, or $218,000 a year. So if someone tries to watch videos and they can't get mentored and they can't get coached and they can't ask the questions or participate, and they waste 2 years, it cost them $436,000. And that's why I'm saying, whether you're with us or with somebody else, I want you to be successful, CN. Make sure you get live training. For small stuff, like learning how to put a deck in your backyard, you can watch a video. But when you're talking about a career where the average pay is $218,000 a year, and we're talking about principal architects that earn $500,000 or more, you've just got to get education. And wherever you get it, and it needs to be live, you've got to talk to somebody. Whether you attended in a live class somewhere, there's just a difference. So no, we have real education. You might be able to learn to code from a video, because that's simple stuff. But like you might learn how to, that's no different than learning Spanish. But I can tell you what, you may learn Spanish vocabulary, but I promise you're not going to speak it as fluently as if you actually learned it and spoke to somebody all day long. And I speak 2.5 languages. And I can tell you, I've tried learning it the first way. And then I actually immersed myself in Spanish culture and Greek culture, and everything changed. Poof, I could speak a different language. So yes. But that's why architects pay 3 times more than a programmer, because you can't learn it from coding. And the secret to earning more is the supply and demand curves from macroeconomics. Everybody gets taught how to code in college. You can watch courses on learning how to code because it's simple.
That means you can ask ChatGPT to do it for you.
You can actually ask ChatGPT to write the code for you. In fact, my student Douglas, I wrote a program in 30 minutes to change the volume on a video without coding with ChatGPT. But the supply of programmers is sky high, and the demand for them is moderate. The demand for cloud architects is sky high, but the supply is nothing.
Yeah.
And the reason it's nothing is it takes so much business, so much leadership, so much sales, so much executive, and so much tech all wrapped up in the same person. So supply is nothing.
Yeah. So sorry.
I was going to say, look what happens in areas where there's no supply. Look at Miami, Florida, and the prices. Look what happened in Holland with tulip prices. People were paying, mortgaging their houses to buy a tulip, for example, just the flower, because it was in demand. So I want you to pick a career that you love. But if it happens to be something where there's no supply and huge demand, now you're talking the money. As they said in Jerry Maguire, show me the money. That's how you get the money.
So yeah, just as a reminder, you register for that webinar on Thursday. I put that link in there in the chat box for you and for anyone else that's interested. And not just you, everyone else it's there for you.
Yep.
Join that webinar. It's free. You can ask more questions. You can learn more about what we do, how we do it, and what's involved. I also put the link directly to the training page, the portal page, so you can see more about what is included. And so hopefully that can answer some of your questions as well. So I'll put all those there in the chat box. But I got to get back to get us back on track here a little bit. I said I was going to put a pin in a question that I had while we went to the chat box. So to circle back to what Mike was talking about earlier, if anybody remembers, I don't know if anybody remembers, but this question popped up in my head. We've been talking about learning the tech. And the biggest thing that the biggest difficulty that we have is explaining the right way to learn the tech. And so we're focused on the architect career. And so we speak towards architects in the majority of our content. So this question is geared towards that. But it's also relevant for every role. How important is it to understand how the tech works? Not anything other than knowing how it works. What does it do? How does it work? And what's the purpose of it? How important is that for the architect's career? As opposed to learning the tech and I got to do this way, and I got to make sure that this is tuned this way, and then I got to make sure that this is set up properly over here. How important is it to just to know in and out how it works, why it works, or what its purpose is, and why the business would use it? How important is that?
Let's put it into context. When we were going to launch our cloud engineering program, I wanted somebody that could communicate, and architects generally communicate well because it's a requirement of their job. So I called on some cloud architect friends that were working at big cloud providers and in Deloitte and other places. It might not have been Deloitte, it was one of the big four consulting companies. And I said, do any of you guys still remember how to configure things? Or have you ever learned how to configure things? Because I'd love you to teach some things with your communication skills. Every one of them said, Mike, I've never configured anything in my life. One said they did, but it was so long ago they couldn't remember. The last time I configured everything was when I left engineering 25 years ago. That was the last time, because architects are focused on the business. If you don't know how the system works, you will never get a job. And if somehow somebody's lucky enough to get a job, they'll be fired within the first 90 days. If you know how the technology works, you can work anywhere, anytime. So knowing how the technology works is absolutely critical. But the business benefits are equally critical to the cloud architect, because it doesn't matter if you can design the fastest rocket in the world if you don't have anybody to buy it. And nobody buys tech because they like it, except for me. I'm a geek. So I bought Cindy this new iPad 13 Pro. I had one for myself, but I bought it a couple of weeks ago because I wanted to see what it was like. That Apple Vision thing comes out, I'll have it on the first day. Apple had a new Mac Studio. I bought it maxed out with 192 gigs of RAM and the M2 Ultra processor, and maxed out because I like tech. But my business is tech. I teach people tech. So I've got Threadripper systems sitting in a closet that I would build just to play with to see how VMware ESXi would run it, because I love tech. But you know, that's me, and I've got the disposable income to buy as much of it as I want because I worked as an architect for so many years, and I just like it. But remember this, we don't touch the tech. And whether you know how to configure the tech or not, generally speaking, it doesn't matter. Although somebody's going to ask you if you know how to do it, so you should probably say yes, that you've played with it along the way. But it doesn't matter. If you don't know how the tech works, you can't design anything. If you don't know what problems it solves, you can't design anything. And guess what? If you can't get the right information from your clients in the first place, which is learning how to ask the right questions and using a consulting-like methodology and how you ask the questions in a systematic fashion, you're not even going to know what the requirements are. You're not going to be able to design anything in the first place. So 100% critical to know how the tech works. Whether you know how to configure it or not, I don't care. I'm not going to ask my architect to configure anything.
Couldn't agree more, Mike. So we have any more questions, Chris, or we're good?
Yeah, I got, you know me, I always got questions over here in the chat box. Do you got anything that you wanna ask, Mike, before I go to the chat box?
You know what's been concerning me, and this is a part of my personal journey of what happened to me years ago. And I wish I ran into you years ago, Mike, would have saved me lots of time, lots of resources, lots of money. But one of the things that I think is very important is everyone talks about emphasizing certifications. Which one should I get? Which one should I get? And people need to understand that cloud service providers are only a facet of what the agnostic cloud is. And from a pyramid standpoint, the agnostic cloud is the foundation. The higher you go up and the more you want to streamline more of your architectural design prowess, then you start getting into some of these cloud service providers, specifically Azure, AWS, and if they are able to capture more market share, go for GCP. But I think it's very important that you don't go with the cloud service providers environment first and then focus on the foundation afterwards, because it will really short circuit, if you will, your learning and the ability to understand the cloud as a whole. What do you think about that?
100% agree with you.
Sounds like you summed that up. You've got Mike speechless over there, Alonzo. Great.
Hey, I got a great teacher.
You hit the nail right on the head. I don't think there's much more to say to that. Boom.
We trained you. You tried the other approach. We trained you. We got you a cloud job, and I begged you to come back because you're not only like a brother to me, but I also knew you'd be great for our students.
Yeah,
I'm bookmarking that. That is 1 hour and 19 minutes into this. Okay. All right. I like that. So, okay. I'm not sure if I've ever seen that. All right.
I'll try to do that more often.
Yeah, that was interesting. That makes my buzzer kind of obsolete. You know, I got to figure out how to replicate that. Well, there was a question earlier here in the chat box. I got to find it.
And while you find that question, I'm going to get some statistics for one of the other questions. Because
I thought I was the data guy.
I wanted to pull some data.
I thought I was the data guy.
We're cross training each other over and over again. So I love how this cross pollination works.
All right. So I found my question. I'm going to hold on to it for a second. So while I'm waiting, I'm just going to do a quick rundown. Here's my fire sale of everything. Tyrone, are you ready for my fire sale? I'm about to give everybody everything and every link. All right. So I want to tell you about our free How to Get Your First Cloud Job webinar that we are doing this Thursday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. Join us on our Zoom meeting where you can interact with us, ask questions. We'll tell you all about our training and our program and how to become the ultimate cloud architect. We'll give you a whole rundown of everything that you need to learn and everything that you need to do. And you can ask us questions and come off mute and talk to us and interact with us. And, if you choose to enroll with us, great. If you don't, we've hopefully helped you. So join that webinar. Also, get your free How to Get Your First Cloud Architect Job guide. If you don't feel like talking to us, fine. Get the guide. Get the document. You can just read it right now. Get it. It's free for you. Get that guide. It summarizes everything that we're going to cover in the webinar. So maybe you don't want to talk to us. Maybe you do want to talk to us and you want to get that guide and be prepared for when you talk to us. Either way, do it. Get that free resource. Get the free Winning the Interview guide. It's there. It's free. The most important part of this, everybody puts all their time, effort, and energy into preparing for a job and then no time or anything into doing the interview properly. There's a big delta between somebody that doesn't do the interview right and somebody that does do the interview right. Maybe you get the job, but you didn't do the interview good, so you're at the bottom of the pay scale. Or you get the job and you blew the interview out of the water, the entire process, and you increase your offer by 30% just because of how great you did on the interview. Boom. That's tens of thousands of dollars increase in your annual salary, at least. So get the free interview guide resource. Also, get our free resource on why tech skills aren't enough. I know we're talking all about tech and how to learn the tech, but that's only part of it. That's not enough. You need to get more. So anyway, I thought I was going to have more time. I thought Mike was going to be out there pulling all kinds of data and everything like that. So I thought I was going to have more time, but Mike, I see you're back already. So I tried to get that all really fast. So I don't know what you got data for, but I found the question I was looking for. So I don't know where you want me to go with this.
We'll go to your questions, and then I'll get to the security architect question afterwards.
Okay. All right. That was going to be my next one. Earlier, Angelo asked, why is it important? And this goes right in line with that lead magnet up there. Why is it important to communicate how our technical solutions meet business needs?
Great question. So, Chris, I got a question for you.
Yes, we can do a whole show about this. Yes. Is that your question?
No. I got this device. It's Cindy's iPad. It's $1,400. I don't know what it costs. I have no idea. I didn't really care. I just bought it. I've got this $1,400 device, and you can watch cat videos on it. How exciting is that to you?
Well, actually, no, I've tried that with Sunny. It's not that exciting.
Okay. Now, I've got a $10,000 iPad, Chris. Now, this iPad can run predictions for you, and these predictions can buy a currency in the U.S. It can then, via arbitrage, trade it for the yen, which can then trade it for the yuan, and then when you get back, for every dollar you spent, you got $1.25. All on this iPad because it runs a special machine learning algorithm.
Do I have to do anything?
Nope. You just have to buy this thing.
Boom.
Now this iPad's $100,000. This iPad's $100,000, which means it's going to cost you $600 a month.
Whoa, you just increased it 10 times. You said it was 10 grand.
Yeah.
Hold on now. Let's go back to the drawing table.
now it's $100 grand. But you can, for every dollar, you can get $1.25 back, and you can do that all day long, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's $100 grand. Does it matter?
Still worth it at 100 grand.
Yeah, still worth it. And that's why it's important. Because if this thing was $10 million, a bank would still buy it. It was $100 million.
Mike, tell your ice machine story.
I worked with a hospital at one point that had no budget for anything. And they had about 2,000 nurses. It was about total, all their FTEs. And you know what we discovered? That the average nurse was spending an extra hour and a half each day walking to some silly ice machine.
Each
Now, I
nurse,
want you to
the equivalent of 2,000 full-time employees, 2,000
yes.
spending an extra hour and a half a day.
Now,
Continue.
if you think about it, a fully loaded nursing salary, including benefits, on average is about $50 a year, an hour. But it's 75 with overtime. So let's assume we save 1 hour of overtime, which is $75 per nurse for 2,000 nurses. Maybe it's a little less than 2,000, but let's just say that. Now, think about this. This ice machine could have been $100,000 and nobody would have cared. It was a couple $1,000s, but that's the key. Once the business understands what the tech can do for them, if it really will, they'll buy it. But if it's just a piece of tech that's going to sit on the shelf, this might not be worth $1,500. The only reason this is worth $1,500 is because I like cool tech. I like to play with it. Cindy will play with it. It'll entertain her. And she's less likely to go, eek, 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 sitting outside my office and crying because I'm not there to play with her. So for me, the cat entertainment would make it worth a lot more than it actually was. And the Mac is pretty easy to use. And my cat's smart enough to figure out how to use a Mac soon. I'm working on it with it. But yeah, that's the key. The key is if the tech solves a problem, it's worth something. If the tech doesn't solve a problem, it's worth nothing.
Exactly. And that's
it's a
why,
waste of money.
Right. And that's why I brought up that conversation about the ROI earlier. The importance of understanding how the tech, or lack thereof, can impact the ROI. Maybe it's not even your tech. And this goes back to the example that Mike gave about telling a customer no. I guarantee you there's going to be situations where you're going to say, you know what, my solution isn't the one you need.
Right.
You need to buy an ice machine. You know, or you need to install a second door. Or
yeah, but you think about it's not even the tech, but being that trusted advisor is what created. Sometimes you may not be able to sell that tech, but what you get in that relationship and that trust building is going to be far more valuable.
Yeah. Let me get to this security question. I think you and I are looking at the same one. Give me a second. I got to scroll. Got to do a lot of scrolling. And then I got one that I really want to talk about, but where's this question? I saw this question. Okay, from Emperor. Is it that question? Okay. So he asked one and he rephrased it. So here's his first one. Is there a cloud security architect? As a beginner, how can I achieve this role? Because all my other research gives me the run around. So can you explain a simple version?
Oh yeah.
Rephrasing my first question, is cloud security architect a good sector, or should I look at another career?
So yes. First, Emperor, cloud security architect is a great job.
Mm-hmm.
And the key is all you need to do is find a good security architecture training program like ours and take it. We've got people like Delroy Bad who got hired, and the last job he had was working on as an EMT on ambulances. The key is the way you get someplace is by getting the right training. I had this conversation with my wife the other day because so many people in tech seem to be obsessed with doing what I call zigzag. And here's what I mean. Let's say somebody wants to become a doctor. They could become a medical assistant and spend 10 grand to go to school for that for 2 years. Then they could become a nursing assistant. Then they can become a nurse. Then they could go to school to become a pharmacist, and then they could become a doctor. And 30 years later, they'll now be a physician, and they lost physician earnings every single one of those years. Or they could go to medical school. The way you become an architect is you get architect training. So whether it was Ivan Tamba, who was a waiter who's now working for AWS, whether it was Coyote, who was a college student whose first job was with AWS, whether it was Noah Parker, who was a social worker whose first job was as a cloud architect, when it was Jennifer Emo, who was a mental health tech whose first job was an architect for JP Morgan Chase, whether it was Daniel Bosey, you can see a lot of these videos on our YouTube channel, who didn't even graduate high school, whose first job was a cloud architect for AWS, whether it was Wallace Agana, whose first job in tech was an enterprise architect, which is even better than a cloud architect for JP Morgan Chase, whether it was Balwinder, who was a stay-at-home mom, who then became a cloud architect working for Microsoft. And I could give you a lot more examples. Their first job is as an architect. But why they train as an architect? Now, Emperor, I'm going to give you something else. I know people that have been cloud engineers for a decade that I have to retrain to turn into an architect, and here's why. You don't learn a job by learning somebody else's job. You don't become an airplane pilot by learning how to drive a race car. It's different. You become an architect by taking an architect training program. So first, what I'd like you to do is go download that list of everything you need to know to be a cloud architect, take our cloud architect webinar, and we train plenty of cloud security architects. But Emperor, I want you to think long-term. Do you want to focus on any area of architecture like security? And if so, believe me, you can get a nice $300,000 security architect job over time, probably graduate with $150,000 to $200,000 job like our average student. Or do you want to focus on business? I like to focus on business. I started as a network architect and I moved into an enterprise architect, and that's why, and where I tend to function. And why? Because the architect jobs can turn into anything because they're so close to the C-level. Want to go work at Accenture? Architecture is a great plan. You know, the average, managing director there earns $384. They're fairly low paying compared to other people. Want to be a senior director at IBM? It's a $400,000 job. Want to be a principal architect at Amazon? And that's more based on your business acumen. Average pay is $372. Want to be a sales rep at Amazon? Pay is $330 for a global account manager. Want to be a principal architect at Microsoft? Again, this is more businessy oriented. We're dealing with $380 a year. Want to be a senior director at Cisco? Great place for an architect to go is their second job. Average pay of $527. Want to be a senior director at Palo Alto? These are all from Glassdoor. The average pay is $540. And actually, it's changed a little bit on the Google architect job. It's about $450, the average is right now. But still, you're still dealing with a $500,000 architect job. So what makes some architects earn $500,000 or $800,000 when others earn $150? It's the business acumen. It's the leadership skills. It's the executive presence. It's the communication skills. So, Emperor, becoming a cloud security architect is an exceptional career. We can train you and you will love it. The thing is, you go to architect training and you work as an architect. That's the path. It's very simple. Or you could become a more general architect and focus more on the business piece. And that's why we have our elite program, or the premier program, is to really help people with that. But even if you became a regular architect and took leadership training later, beyond the basic leadership training, again, you're still going to get there. So the key is, yes, being a cloud security architect is a wonderful job. And they're not hard jobs to get at all as long as you've got the right skills. But I'd encourage you to think about developing more business skills and maybe taking that cloud security architecture in the future into a more enterprisey architect career, or a cloud architect focused more on business. And that way you've got much higher earnings and much more career potential.
All right. So Z says, I really appreciate you and the team for addressing my question. I signed up a long time ago, but life happens. We understand.
Yeah.
I'm aiming to start back next month. Great.
Welcome back.
Welcome back.
Yes. Welcome back. Welcome back. We are excited to have you back.
Your login should still work. Come to class. We're excited to see you.
You are not the first person to have life happen to them.
Nope.
We all do.
And you know what makes us stand apart is that we're not cohorts or anything else. We don't get on like any Universal Studio ride. You pack them in, you send them on their way. Next thing you know, the cars are empty and they're ready for the next batch. We do continuous learning. This is lifelong learning, and we treat it as such. So make sure that you're always learning, and that we're always going to be here to help everyone get from point A to point D, because we want to make sure that you're hired. We're not in a certification business. We're not in the cohort business, boot camp, or anything else. So we want to see that you're hired, and we're going to make sure that you get you there. But we want you to, just like you've expressed and just like you've shared, Z, you came back. Life got in the way, or you had to take care of some business, but your tenacity, your desire to want to reach that goal, you met us halfway, and then we're going to take you the rest of the way with our development training.
Absolutely.
So I got one more. I got another question here, and then I'm going to let Alonzo steer after this question. King Leo asked, does your program teach on how to become a business enterprise architect or only cloud solutions architect? And Tyrone shared the link to Wallace's video so that he could see that. He says, I enjoy the business side a lot more, so that's my focus.
So King Leo, we teach cloud architecture with a bias towards enterprise architecture. And that's why Angelo, who's here, is an enterprise architect who you saw in the chat box. Pritpal left our program and became an enterprise architect. So the answer is we train enterprise architects, and we follow a lot of standard enterprise architect methodologies as well. Having said all of that, getting a cloud architect job after our program is easy as a first job. We get cloud architects and solution architects hired every day, or almost every day. That's nothing, with or without experience. Becoming an enterprise architect generally takes a few years of experience. Now, Wallace did it with no tech experience, but he had extremely good soft skills. And when we're talking soft skills, we're not talking regular soft skills. We're talking really good levels of finesse. So the answer is it's possible that our program would immediately turn you into an enterprise architect. But I don't want to say that it's likely if you've never worked in tech before. So I'd like to say we can easily turn you into a cloud architect. You'll learn all those enterprise architect things from us. And then with a year or two experience, you could easily move into an enterprise architecture role. And because we definitely teach these things, and we're adding some more enterprise architecture every day, actually. But we've got a lot of enterprise architecture in there already.
I think that's a great thing because understand, King Leo, like we had expressed, cloud architecture is 50% tech, 50% business. So being able to speak to that from a business transformative perspective is going to be bread and butter for the cloud architect. So no matter how good you are at knowing that tech, if you're not able to understand, communicate those benefits, then that's going to be a challenge or a headwind for any cloud architect. So through our training, we help you to understand CXO relevancy, business acumen, presentation skills, soft skills, emotional intelligence. These help to formulate how we're going to communicate those business benefits to any type of client. So it's all these puzzle pieces that come together for that business aspect of it is something that I know you'll be interested in as well.
All right. So I completely forgot that I had a question that I had earmarked that I am so excited to talk about. Never fails. Seems like every show somebody gets me up on my soapbox. I love it. It's great. Let me have fun with this. You guys sit back and relax.
Okay.
Asias Burnett asked, "Hey team, a lot of cloud architect job roles, from what I've seen, are about 80% cloud engineering responsibility and 20% cloud architect responsibility. As a cloud architect, do you still apply for those jobs or just avoid them?" Okay, let me pull up my soapbox, my
Before
megaphone.
you do that, Chris, I would say, why are you applying for jobs anyway? If you really have the right branding and marketing skills, employers are going to come to you and fight for you. You're not going to have to apply for them. But I'll get back to Chris for that.
So as I was going to say, make sure to follow the content in the program where we talk about exactly what Mike just said. You're in the program. You have access to that. I would not recommend applying. If you do, selectively apply. Now, why does it seem like all of these have completely unrelated skills? Because they have completely unrelated skills. Because they're written by people that don't know what the job is.
Exactly.
It's I can't tell you how many job descriptions and how many hiring managers and how many recruiters I speak to that tell me that the job descriptions don't make any sense. It just doesn't. And that's just the nature of it. I come from a HR background. I come from a hiring background as well. I did HR for multiple years. I was a hiring coordinator for a 600-person company. So our location of a company. And, larger scale, it was 20,000, but at that single location, it was 600. So I've done that. I've been in hospitality and executive roles that I've interviewed thousands of people. I've been responsible for creating job descriptions. I've been responsible for reviewing job descriptions. And now in my current role, I talk to people every day about this. the job descriptions make no sense. And the
No.
reality of it is that the hiring manager should be the one to write the job description, because
Good.
they're the one that has the job opening and they're the ones that know what they want. But the reality is they don't have the time to write a job description. They aren't always the best people to put into written word what it is they're looking for either. So they will go out and they will go find a job posting from any place and say, okay, this looks good. They'll add some stuff to it and it doesn't make any sense. They'll forward it over to human resources. Human resources will then look at it and say, okay, I got to put some of the stuff from corporate on here that we're required to have. And then it turns into this Frankenstein. Or worse yet, human resources creates it from whole cloth without any input from the hiring manager.
That happens a lot.
One of two things are happening. Those are the two primary things that are going to happen. And it's unfair to HR because HR shouldn't be responsible for hiring people in departments that they don't have any idea what the people want. It just doesn't make any sense. But it's the position that they're in. It's what we have. It's what the whole industry, every industry does. So that's where we are. We talk with people all the time. We've had people talk to our class, and I'll say it again. I say it every week. I say it again. We have people tell our classes, tell our students that their job descriptions are bad copy and paste jobs. I've had hiring directors tell me that their job descriptions contradict themselves. We've seen job descriptions that ask for Kubernetes experience longer than Kubernetes has been in existence. It's unfathomable that these job descriptions would have any semblance to reality. So, to answer your question, as a cloud architect, do you apply for these jobs? No, I would not. One of our recent hires got a great job. The job description was a breath of fresh air. I think I'm trying to see what the message was, because I asked them to share the job description with me. So
they're usually garbage.
Yeah, it's usually garbage. But I remember they shared the job description with me, and my exact words were,
while you're looking for that,
I love this job description. It makes so much sense. It tells actually what the job is. I had to ask him, I said, did this mirror the interview process? And he said, yes, it did. It was exactly like, and you don't ever find that. So, no. Yeah. So if you're going to apply, it has to be selective. You have to be smart about your applications. So, and we cover that in the program. It's new content that we've just put in that, in the later sections of the Cloud Architect Career Development Program. But we don't want to put it up at the front because we don't want you interviewing up front. We want you interviewing at the bottom. So make sure to take a look at that. You have access to it as well as everyone else that's in the program. But I'd love to hear what Alonzo and Mike have to say about this.
I want to add to this. So anytime there's any engineering in there, it is not an architect job. 100% not. Because as an architect, not only can you not even design the architecture yourself, your days are going to be in meetings and managing stakeholders and selling and entertaining clients. You're going to have more experience determining which scotch and wine to order for your client than you actually will with touching technology. Now, I will tell you, early in my career, I took a consulting systems architect job. I took it for 3 days. The first day I went in there was a guy from Asia, and he runs up to me, "Oh, you're the new architect?" He hugged me, and then he ran out the door. And I was a little scared what they were. Wow. And then when I got there, I met the CIO, and the CIO says, "Well, you know you're here as a consulting systems engineer, not an architect." And I said, "Huh?" He said, "We didn't really want an architect. We just wanted to pay somebody more than an engineer because we wanted a CCIO like you because they were a Cisco Gold partner, and you're an engineer." And I said, "Goodbye." So, here's the thing. Elias, could you imagine trying to fly an airplane? While you're flying the airplane, a big 747, handing out all the drinks and the food to the passengers, keeping the passengers in their seats, and by the way, when there's a mechanical problem, jump out of a flying airplane and go fix the engine. You're being set up to fail. if you're a pilot and you push the autopilot button after the takeoff and then work as a flight attendant the whole time, you're a flight attendant. You're not a pilot. So no. Now, I would encourage you to do this. 90% of the time I see a job description, I find somebody at the company and ask what they actually do in their job. And I've never had more than 10% of anything that was on a job description. I've never been on an interview where I didn't get hired, and you can too. So the key is, when you see a ridiculous job description that has 14 people's jobs, I want you to leverage LinkedIn or your relationship or your network and find somebody that works there and ask them what they do in that job. That's the job description. And oh, by the way, you want to increase your chances of getting hired and you want to actually find out the job description for real? There's only one way you're ever going to get the real job description. On your interview, when that hiring manager says, do you have any questions for me? Don't use any of those ridiculous questions you've seen on the internet, and definitely don't do anything you'd find in a Reddit group, because that'll definitely crush you. Here's what I want you to ask. Mr. Manager, but don't use that, call them by their name, or Mrs. Manager. Could you tell me what your goals are for you and your team so that I know that if I was part of your team, I could help make the team more successful? Two things. It shows the hiring manager you're a solution provider and you're trying to show them what you can do for them, not take from them. And two, now you're going to get the actual job description. And that's the only time. What your job description is what the manager wants you to do, what their goals are. And by the way, you can be an architect and choose to be all business, and you can be an architect that's more tech based upon your goals and your manager's goals once you find out.
All right, so I'm going to do some rapid fire questions to end the show on here. I'm going to go all the way back to the beginning, and when I say rapid fire, I mean rapid fire. I will use the buzzer. Not just Mike. I'll do it to Alonzo too.
I know you're not afraid to use it on him.
Yeah. So going way back to the beginning, James T asked, if you had an opportunity to meet and talk with a tech executive, what questions would you ask? How would you make the most of your conversation? 30 seconds each, guys. All of us.
James T, I run business councils of tech executives, my CIOs my whole life. What I would suggest is I would ask them, what matters most to you?
Mm-hmm.
And what did you do to get to your current position? Because those are the things, James T, that you need to know. What matters to them and how they got there, because that's what I want you to do.
Couldn't agree more, Mike.
That was 20 seconds. Now you're
focusing on what matters to them and how you're going to be able to position what you say to them to leverage their goals and help them realize it is very important. Always focus on what you can do for them, how your value is going to realize their goals, and always in that conversation with a solution about how you can make that happen. That's very important.
Exactly.
Yeah. I would say it depends on the context. It depends on the situation. Because both examples that they gave, all the examples that they gave are great. Depending on the situation, stick to one of them. Yes. Because if it's a situation where, like, it's a casual situation, you're going to want to pick their brain about how they got to where they are all day long. And what can they and what they have to share with you. Now, if it's a more businessy situation, then you're going to want to know what might you be able to help them with. What are some things that they're concerned with in their day-to-day basis? That type of thing. So that's a situational answer, I believe.
I think another one that we need to ask is, if you had an opportunity, meaning that you've already spent some time thinking about this particular person, this exec, do a little research on them. Find out what their likes and their dislikes are. Have there been any TED Talks? What are their goals and everything else? So doing your recon before you have an opportunity to meet this person, if possible, would be a great solution. Or if you happen to meet them impromptu in a event, find someone that you might be comfortable with to try to get an understanding of this person before you approach them or speak to them. I got bugged. Okay.
you got greedy there.
Hey, better to ask for forgiveness than permission.
Exactly. All right. So here's a question from Alan earlier. Please dive into the importance of explaining tech to non-techies. I met with our executive coach, and she told me people lose business because they can't make their point fast enough. And that's why I'm doing rapid fire, because we got to make our points fast.
Yeah. Alan, since we're short on time, I'm going to make this clear to you. No business executive cares anything about tech. And if you sound like a techie, you'll be escorted out of the room. Business people don't care. What they care is what the tech can do for them. So if you can't, in 15 seconds, tell somebody what is the tech, how does the tech work, and why they should use it, they're not interested. You've got 20 seconds to tell somebody to tell them about yourself on an interview. If it goes longer than that, the interview's over, you're not hired. If you can't make it simple, elegant, and effective, you're done. So yes, your executive coach is right. Get to the point, do it fast, and put what's in it for them.
I would definitely recommend YouTube. A quick little excerpt about Wolf of Wall Street, Sell Me a Pen. Take a look at that. Refer to that about how he presented a product, how he convinced them to focus on the sizzle and not the steak. I love that reference, Steve. And next thing you know, the pen was sold. So focus on that.
Alan had a follow-up. The executive coach brought in a trainer. Our entire C-suite agreed to meet with me monthly to discuss soft skills and career development. How do I continue to make the most of this opportunity?
Well, if they're a real executive coach, what they're going to do is they're going to have a good psychological coaching background, and you're going to be able to tell them what your goals are, and you're going to tell them what your challenges are, and they're going to teach you how to solve these things yourself. They're also going to help you with your executive presence and communication skills. So, Alan, what I'd figure out is what I need to do most. I would suggest really learning how to sell and how to develop your executive presence, because the more that you have, the more of anything you'll be able to achieve in life. And executive coaches are great at that. And I had one for many years that taught me that. Now I have an executive coach that teaches me how to be a better executive.
Chris is not playing with that buzzer.
No, we need Chris to do that.
I gave him 40 seconds on that one. Okay.
Oh man.
It's how much fun we have.
You got anything to add to that, Alonzo?
I'm not getting buzzed, bro. That's a trick question.
Yeah. Smart. You're smart there. All right. Okay, so let's see. Taylor E asks, how does architecture differ from working in a bank, hospital, or any other private business? Okay, I give you more than 40 seconds this time, Mike.
Okay, I'm just going to address this. So
Yeah,
Taylor, every piece of technology that you use changes the way people work. So hospitals implemented a new electronic health record. Doctors' offices were forced to do it by the government. Now the doctor used to spend 12 minutes visiting a patient and 3 minutes writing a chart. Now the doctor has 3 minutes with the patient and 12 minutes using the computer. That's how much architecture can change it. So business needs drive the architecture. What is the current business state? What would you like the business to be? That's your target business state. You do a gap analysis between the two, and you figure out the people, the processes, and the technologies to get that business to the end state. That's what we do as architects. And it will be very different. And JP Morgan Chase and Bank of America and Goldman Sachs are all going to have different needs because they operate businesses differently.
That's it?
That's it, yeah.
Okay, all right. I like that. All right. Let's see. I'm not sure I understand this one. Just got feedback on a solution architect interview that I didn't have enough hands-on experience, but great theoretical knowledge. I said, yes, architect is not an engineer. Do you cover this? I'm not sure.
So I'm going to answer this. If someone told you didn't have enough hands-on experience, it's because they didn't think you were capable of doing the job. It's an excuse. Let me give you the excuses people talk about. I'm sorry you don't have enough experience. Come back to me when you have more experience. It's when they don't like something. And I'm not trying to be difficult. But I use them all the time. So I know people, and I've got a kid that didn't graduate high school with no hands-on experience hired by JP Morgan Chase. And I've given 30 examples or 10 examples, so I could give you 50 more. We cover this. We will get you there. We will have you so polished up that people have no question as to you being an expert or not. And if you answer one question with the kind of depth that I would teach you how to do, just one of them, you won't have any more technical questions on the interview. You're going to do great. So if you got feedback that you need some different kinds of experience, you just need to polish it up a little more. You're going to be great. You have the capability. You just have to communicate it correctly. So yes, we'll help you with that. In fact, I gave an example in with the interview program to some of my students, and I had one of my employees, and she actually asked, I said, answer this incorrectly. And my students watched me pummel her and pummel her and pummel her and pummel her. And then I had her answer the question in a level of depth, and the question was over, and I asked her what she likes in her spare time. That's the key. You're going to be fantastic.
It's job placement after the training. So let's talk about after and during the training. And join our webinar on Thursday. I shared this earlier when you asked this question, Elias. Join our webinar on Thursday, because this is not the place where we can elaborate too much on this. You get hired in the training.
Yes.
Completion for us is you getting a job offer.
Yes.
Or a promotion, or whatever it might be. So we work with recruiters. You have to work with recruiters as part of our program. It's not we're going to do everything for you. It's a combination. It's a group effort. Everybody's working together to get you to your goal. So you getting a job is a requirement for the program to be completed. That's how we do it. I can't tell you how many people have not reached 100% in the training program because they've gotten a job.
Most.
I'm perfectly fine that they don't reach 100% and have a after the training experience, because there is no after the training for us. So that's why I encourage you to register for that webinar, so we could go into greater depth and actually talk with you about that.
I'm going to touch that real quick. Graduation for us is when you are hired, which means you stay in our program until the day you are hired. You've got 1 year's access to the live classes, and there's unlimited access to all the other things, the training, content, Slack, the community, and you will not leave until you're hired. That's what our goal is for you. Now, you don't need a year to get hired in our program, but graduation is hired, and you'll have more than enough opportunities to get hired.
All right. So all the rest of the questions have to do with our program. So I'm going to encourage everybody to come to our webinar on Thursday. I'll let Mike speak for a little bit towards each of these, but I got happy wife, happy life.
Yep.
So we're going to keep happy wife, happy life.
So how long does it take to graduate our program? It's generally between 6 and 12 months. Based upon how fast you learn and how much you're willing to study. I had Richard Foucault get through in 3 days. I had Joseph Millen, but he did have experience in networking, get through in 3 weeks, hired by AWS. Richard Foucault was also hired by AWS. But 6 to 12 months on average. But your mileage may vary. Maybe you can read faster than somebody else. Maybe you can learn faster than somebody else. You get through quicker. Maybe you're super polished in the way you speak. You get through quicker. Maybe you have to take extra time during presentations, but the goal is that you do all the work until you're hired and you get hired, and that's all that matters.
All right. And Lonzo, if you can read that one off, or Mike, if you can read that one.
Okay, from Adeyemi, Mike, did you do any boot camp or special training to transition from network engineer to network engineer role to a cloud architect role, or did you self-study?
I did not self-study. You don't become a cloud architect via self-study. It cost me about $200,000 to do so. I did the real training, which was a master's in business administration, which taught me half of the things I needed to go to architecture. And after that, I had about $100,000 of executive presence training, leadership training, sales training, emotional intelligence training, CXO relevancy training. And I incorporate as many of those skills as I can in our training, because that's the training. You don't go from engineer to architect by learning tech. It's about learning business. And I literally spent, it was $200,000 to do so. And I made this program so that you don't have to.
All right.
And both me, Chris, and Alonzo all have MBAs and paid that kind of money for them to get to these places.
All right, Alan, ask us your question in Slack or in class. Here's Alan's question just for reference. I work at a hospital. We have a data architect position open. If offered the position, should I take it? I missed your thoughts on this last time. I had to leave early. If that's a role that you desire and that you are capable of doing, then yes. I'll use an example. I know someone recently that was interviewed for a role at a hotel that is opening in August, and which is next month, literally a week from today, or on the long end, 5 weeks from today. In the interview, she found out that they have not hired a single person. That is not an opportunity for success. So, same thing here. Make sure it's an opportunity for success. If it's something that you want to do and something that you are capable of doing, then yes. Now, if it does not mark those two criteria, then my recommendation is no. If you guys want to elaborate any further on that, or we can.
No, I think that's absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, hit the nail on the head there.
Yep. So we got a New Year's resolution. I know it's July, but I'm sticking to this New Year's resolution of 2-hour shows. We started this off last year as a 2-hour show. Somehow we got into like 3 hours and 4 hours, and I think 4.5 hours one time. We got to keep people happy. So we're sticking to 2 hours. So we are at 2 hours and 3 minutes.
Yeah.
I want to wrap it up. I want to do my rapid fire. Join our webinar on Thursday. Tyrone and I both just recently put that link in the chat box on Thursday. I noticed there was a lot of questions about our training. We love to talk about our training, but we also love to have a show where we get to talk about things other than our training. So that's why we didn't take all the training program questions because we wanted to do the program. And we answered some of them at the end, as many as we could. But join the webinar on Thursday. You can come off mute. You can talk to us on Zoom. You can ask us all your questions. Even if you don't want to come off Zoom, just put them in the chat box on Zoom. And that is a dedicated space for us to talk about our training. So join that webinar on Thursday. Even if you can't join it, register for it. You'll get a recording. You'll get a copy of the recording if you register, but only if you register. We're not going to send it to you if you don't register because we don't want to spam your inbox. So register for that webinar. If you can attend it for 5 minutes, great. If you can't, great. We'll send you a recording. If you can attend the whole thing, even better. So join that webinar. Also, get the guide, How to Get Your First Cloud Architect Job Guide. If you don't want to listen to us, get the guide, read the guide. If you want to read the guide and then join us, great. You'll be prepared. You got a lot of questions? Good. Get the Winning the Interview guide. Get the How to Catch a Cat guide. That might help Mike right now. But get the Winning the Interview guide. Get the Why Tech Skills Aren't Enough guide. Get all of these free resources to help you. I know I'm blowing you up with links. Thank you, Tyrone, for helping me. Thank you, everybody on YouTube, for letting me do it. But I want to thank all of you for being here. I hope you enjoyed the show. Leave a like if you liked it. Truly leave a like if you liked it. Hit the subscribe button. Hit the notification bell button. Do all that good stuff. Tell us in the chat box that you had fun. Everything. Mike, Alonzo, any last words about the topic of learning the tech and how to learn the tech? Mike, I know you're about to go, but let's end on Mike. So let's go to Alonzo first and let Mike end it.
Yeah, absolutely. Please, 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 please. We've got tons of information for you, whether it's in written, visual form, as well as the video, that we're able to get you to your goals the best way, the most efficient and most competent way possible. We encourage everyone to really consider how we can deliver you from point A to your goals without all the extra work, all the extra resources and extra certifications. We believe that competency trumps certifications all day, every day. So please join us. Mike, over to you.
I'm going to give you a couple of cheat codes for success in your technology career. Learn the tech, how it works, as opposed to learning the names of anybody's services and how to configure them. Learn the deep tech. 2, learn business. Why? I just showed you 10 jobs that paid between $350,000 and $600,000. And the range of some of them were up to 700 of those jobs. I just told you the average pay. Because the more business you know, the better. Develop your soft skills, leadership skills, executive communication, and empathy. The world will do anything to get you on your team. And remember, every one of you can do anything you want. The only thing that holds us back is fear. We all have fear. Be courageous. Courageous is not the absence of fear. It's what you do despite fear. And I also want to tell you this. The best investment in the entire world is in yourself and your family. You know, if you learn how to fish, you're never going to be hungry. If you train the right skills, you'll always have a job. You train the right skills, you'll have a job where money becomes irrelevant to you because you have all that you need. And then you can go and help others and do anything that you dream about. And I want you to have a great life. So please believe in yourself. Really figure out what your goals are. Take your dreams, turn them into goals, build a plan, and then execute on that plan. And of course, I promise you, there's going to be obstacles. You got a big dream. Guess what? The only reason it's big is because most people aren't willing to do the work. So do it. You'll reach a sticking point, fight through that sticking point, go to the next sticking point, fight through it. And by the time you know you're at the top of the mountain, you've reached the pinnacle of success and you love every minute of your life. I know what it's like. I spent 7 years in school to learn healthcare, internal medicine, and poof, I went to tech. Why? Because in internal medicine, I worked for a living. I mean, I worked. In tech, I get to play with toys. I get paid to take people and talk to them about their tech, and it's been the most fun experience of my life. Love your life. Live the life of your dreams. Invest in yourself and go conquer all of your dreams. Have a great night, everyone.
Take care, everyone. And thanks for joining.